solid to be able to support their communities, and for the city to be able to support digital inclusion to enable the delivery of the priorities that we would like to see. Digital inclusion is more recently a key pillar in the Leeds digital strategy, which is a really important development in 2022. So we've sort of looked at other strategy across the city that, where we can see that those outcomes will be more easily realised where digital inclusion is supported. But from 2022, digital inclusion has been identified as a key pillar within the city's digital strategy as a foundation. So that's a really important influencer for us to be able to point out as to why digital inclusion should be important. But I'll go back a slide because I forgot to mention, this is a very pared down version of our strategy and mission, etc. At the bottom of some of our slides, there's some additional links to pages on our website. So if you'd like to see any further detail, then you can follow those links when the slides are sent out after the webinar. So why we care about digital inclusion. So our starting point is always thinking about digital inclusion as an enabler. So digital for us is something that helps make people's lives easier. It's something that, regardless of the direction of travel of digital transformation, digital inclusion and being able to utilize digital tools and services helps make people's lives easier. And it's those people that are most likely to need that support, the people who are having a difficult time, the people who are struggling with all sorts of things. They're the people that are most likely to be digitally excluded. And they're also the people that will most likely to benefit from being digitally included, whether that is so that they can maximize their income and manage their finances, so they can access education or employment, so they can stay socially connect with their friends and family, so they can get trustworthy health information, so that they can support their kids with their homework, whatever that is. We'd like people to be able to use digital in the way that's meaningful for them. And to do that, we would like to be able to give everybody informed choice. So for us, it's not about making everybody do digital or sort of trying to argue that digital is the best way or for people to be doing things. And it's not about cost savings or anything either, although that is something that obviously with the financial challenge, is driving sort of digital transformation and digital first agenda and stuff like that. But I would like everybody to have the choice that I think everybody on this webinar has when it comes to whether we choose to use a face-to-face or a digital service or something else. And for everybody to be able to have an informed choice, we need to remove some barriers, and those barriers being motivation, so people understanding the potential personal relevance of digital for them and how engaging with a digital tool or service may be easier for them, because there's often an assumption that digital is not inclusive and face-to-face or traditional services are inclusive, and that's just not true. We know that there are lots of people who find face-to-face or more traditional ways of services being delivered to not be inclusive, people that have got mobility issues, people that have got care responsibilities, people that have got mental health issues or visual and sensory impairments, all sorts of different people that would find a face-to-face potentially more difficult to access, and that may be able to utilize digital technology and the accessibility features and everything to actually make their lives easier. That those people are often, as I mentioned, the people that are least likely to be able to use digital because of some of the other barriers. So we want people to understand the potential cost benefit of them stepping out of their comfort zone and engaging with digital. We need to make sure that people feel confident in their own ability to do digital stuff and be able to do digital safely, and be able to also trust digital tools and services, that they're not going to get hacked or scammed or have their data stolen or anything like that. We need to make sure that people have got the connectivity that they need in terms of the equipment, the Wi-Fi, the data, not just any equipment, Wi-Fi data, but the right equipment for them for what they need to do. Similarly, I've got a laptop, I've got a phone, I've got data on my phone, I've got Wi-Fi at home. I've got options, and I can choose from those options depending on whether it is I'm sending a quick message or writing a report or whatever it might be. I think that everybody should be able to have the equipment that they need, and also the skills, knowing how to do the different things that you might need to do digitally, right from, you know, switching on your device, downloading an app, filling in an online form, whatever it might be. So if all of those different barriers are removed, then we believe that people will be able to make an informed choice about what digital tools and services are easiest for them. So our approach, as I mentioned before, we as a small team don't have the capacity to directly deliver digital inclusion support to members of the community in Leeds. Also, we don't have the skills and knowledge to be able to do that either, because there are lots of different communities, geographical communities or communities of interest, that are more likely to be digitally excluded. And all of those different communities will experience digital exclusion in different ways, and experience those barriers that I mentioned in different ways, and then have different barriers on top. So things like, you know, language barriers, visual and hearing impairments, learning disabilities, you know, physical disabilities, lots of different barriers. We're not experts in how to support each of those communities. We're not experts in the needs of those communities. We're not constantly in contact with those communities, and we're not experts in and not trained in properly supporting those communities. We also, as I mentioned, don't have the capacity to be able to help individuals. We're just not best placed to do that. So our role is about facilitation. It's about making the argument for why digital inclusion is important. It's about championing the use of different digital tools and services, bringing people together to be able to share resource and knowledge based on shared priorities and shared communities they wanted to support, to bring different people together to make sure that that resource and capacity is used to be able to, you know, cover the city with digital inclusion support, and then to look at how we can access funding and bring in more resource into the city to fill the gaps where they are. So our approach is very much at these very cleverly 7 C's that you can see here: culture change, championing, convening, coordinating, collaborating, commissioning, and then finally creating where necessary. So the support that we offer to the organisations that we work with, we take a asset-based community development approach. So looking at the different organisations that are more likely, that are supporting people that are more likely to be digitally excluded, working with those organisations in an information exchange. So we are experts in digital inclusion and exclusion and different digital inclusion interventions. As I mentioned, we're not experts in any of these particular communities. So our initial interaction with an organisation is always to put our heads together. They the people that are on the front line, that understand the holistic needs of the person, the motivators of all the people that they work with, the barriers, not just in digital inclusion, but in the widest possible sense that those individuals that they support face. And so we work with that organisation to pool our knowledge, understand what digital exclusion looks like for that particular community of geography or of interest, what support is going to work best, and then make sure that that organisation is resourced in terms of funding, skills, partnerships, equipment, whatever they might need to be able to support the people that they work with on a day-to-day basis in a way that is tailored, meaningful for those service users, embedded within the organisation's day-to-day, in a way that supports and enables the organisation to realise its priorities, as well as the organisation supporting the individuals to do the things that are meaningful for them. So that's the basis of our community-based approach. So community-based approach, there is a model, which I'll link to later, that we have written and published with the support of local government association with the local authorities to be able to use to inform the design and delivery of their own digital inclusion interventions. And it's basically what I was just talking about. So the community-based approach is about thinking about the needs of a particular community, the assets of that particular community, in terms of the organisations that are already working with, know, are trusted by, the places, the organisations that community of interest or geography are already likely to reach out to when they need support, at a point where they are more likely to be digitally excluded. I'm going to go into some of those communities in a second, but we work with those organisations to, for as long as it takes. It's about working for a long time with and working at the pace of the organisation, bearing in mind that the majority of those organisations are not organisations whose job it is to support digital. They're not organisations that have hired their staff based on their digital prowess. They're often community organisations or health partners or local authority teams whose job it is to support something that digital inclusion will enable. So something like social inclusion or employability or reduction of health inequalities or something like that. So we're looking for those organisations that are already engaged with those communities and understand their needs and are trusted by those communities. And then we're working with the organisation to ensure that digital inclusion support is embedded within that organisation's practices in a way that's meaningful for the individuals that we're supporting, in a way that makes sense to the organisation, and in a way that is, in that way, ongoing and sustainable. So our approach is about organisations being person-centred, so looking at the needs of the individual as they come through the door, rather than trying to have a one-size-fits-all approach, thinking holistically as well. So we understand that, you know, digital exclusion is not something that comes separate to other issues and barriers that people might be facing. It's linked to, you know, things like poverty, for instance. So if we can help the whole person, we can and think about their needs as a whole and what difference they would like to see in their life, and digital as an enabler for that, then it's meaningful for the individual, it's meaningful for the organisation, because it's helping them reach their priorities, and it's customised and designed to be able to meet their particular needs. And it means that the support is in places where people go, where they trust people, and yeah, it's ongoing and sustainable. And this is just an example of a quote from one of our delivery partners, of a person that's been supported, demonstrating that holistic person-centered approach. So a lot of our partner organisations are organisations that support all sorts of things, the person when they walk through the door. And this person in particular accessed Tamara, which is a community centre, because he was struggling with his mental health. And through conversation, they found out that that was because of his wife being ill, and because he was out of work, and because he was struggling to support his family. So by understanding all of that, the organisation was able to support the person by loaning them a tablet with data, by offering them some digital skills support, by offering them some employability support, and finally offering them support to be able to use the NHS app. And all of those things together helped improve the things that were important to that gentleman in his life, helped him to then be able to better support his wife, find sustainable work, reduce his stress, and digital inclusion that enabled all of those different outcomes. So in terms of those communities of interest, we also try and use our resource best by bringing together, where possible, or going to where they already are with existing networks, different partners that support a particular community of interest. So often they have the same sorts of services, they have the same sorts of skills, they've got, you know, shared priorities and shared aims. And we're looking at those different networks as individual pieces, as a whole, individual elements of one whole jigsaw. So looking at if each partner plays its role based on its own strengths and assets in supporting digital inclusion for that community, and they're all working together and signposting to each other, etc. If each of those partners plays a role that's within their scope, that's within their level of resource, that's within their ability, as long as everybody is playing one of those roles or some of those roles in that network, then that network can work together to form a whole. So we think of digital inclusion as it's everybody's job. It's no one person's job. That's how we aim. So that digital inclusion is everywhere and everybody is doing their bit according to what they're able to do. But all of that is pooled into a mutually beneficial partnership, basically. And these are some of the sectors that we're working with at the moment, bringing organisations together, bringing resource in, bringing different partners in that have got skills, knowledge, etc., to be able to support each other and fill some of the gaps that other organisations on that network can't fill. We've also got 4 current formal digital inclusion networks. So we shy away from, we did do this at the start, but we now shy away from just having a digital inclusion network, all organisations that are interested in digital inclusion, because as we mentioned, you know, digital inclusion is means different things. The digital barrier, the barriers to digital inclusion are completely different. The types of intervention that are suitable are completely different depending on the people that the organisation support or the type of organisation that they are. So we co-facilitate 4 networks. Each of those we co-facilitate with a partner that is a specialist in the community of interest that we're supporting, recognising that we're not the specialist in that we're bringing the digital inclusion, and we always need to work with somebody who's going to bring the knowledge of the people. So we've got the Older People's Digital Inclusion Network, which is made up of around 44 different organisations working in Leeds to support older people. Each of those looking at how they can embed digital inclusion throughout their offer. And that's co-facilitated with Leeds Older People's Forum. So in the last year, if you have a look on our website, you'll see some reports around a couple of projects that have been really good examples of how that network can work together to be able to share knowledge and resource. One's called Be Online, Stay Safe, which is a DCMS funded partnership piece looking at how we can support older people from diverse communities that face barriers such as language barriers to develop their online safety and build design resources that can be shared across that network and actually nationally via Ofcom, I think is the plan, so that people have got the skills and knowledge that means that they can feel safe in engaging with wider digital. Another one's called Transport Connects, looking at the various different transport tools and digital transport tools and apps in the city that can support socially isolated older people that might struggle to or be fearful of moving around the city to stay connected. Both of those are big pots of money that were secured by Leeds Older People's Forum with our support from external funding sources, and then that money has been given as grants to different members of the network who have then done the support and delivery with the coordination of Leeds Older People's Forum and ourselves. We've got the Autism and Learning Disabilities Network that's co-facilitated with Pyramid, which is an organisation supporting that community of interest in Leeds, and that brings together organisations supporting adults with learning disabilities and autistic adults. That was actually our first, I believe, community of interest network. We've got the Arts and Culture Network in partnership with our council's culture team, bringing together arts organisations, the focus on digital inclusion for arts participation. And we've actually been speaking to Arts Council England about a research piece looking at arts and culture as a motivator for supporting older people that are reluctant to engage with digital because of motivation and because of that lack of confidence and fear that something's going to go wrong, which is really exciting to come out of that network. We'll let you know if that comes up. And then finally, Digital Health Hubs Network. So that is place-based networks. So local care partnerships in Leeds are place-based networks of health partners, primary care networks and other health partners alongside third sector partners working in that particular place, and council departments and councillors, etc., all supporting health and the wider health determinants for that particular place. So there's a place-based networks as well. We also have a number of externally funded specialist roles. So a big part of our work as 100% Digital Leeds is about identifying, securing external resource for digital inclusion in Leeds, and often or sometimes that will mean being able to hire another person to join our team. And where we do that, that is a specialist person that has got the skills linked to the outcomes needed by that particular fund. Where we do that, we will then recruit a community organisation that will host that individual, and that community organisation also having that specialist skills and knowledge. So we've got Nikki, who is based at Pyramid, that co-facilitates the Learning Disabilities and Autism Network that was funded initially by money from public health to support health participation, and now she's had a slight change of role, still the same community of interest, still the same network, but looking more now at financial resilience because the funding for her role has changed to UK Social Prosperity Fund. We have two 1-year roles of place-based health participation. So digital inclusion officers based at community organisations in particular areas that are facing greater health inequalities in the city, with a remit of supporting digital inclusion capacity for improved health participation and self-management and reduction of health inequalities in particular geographical areas, supporting those digital health hubs in those areas. Those are two roles that are unfortunately coming to an end very soon because of the funding has been lost. Well, the funding has come to an end, I should say. We have just recently got now a digital inclusion officer supporting older people across the city, based within Leeds Older People's Forum, also funded by the UK SPF Social Prosperity Fund to support financial resilience for older people. And there'll be another role as well looking at financial resilience for working age people. So we've got a lot of the work that we do, as I mentioned, is around making sure that everybody's signposting into each other and tapping into the available digital inclusion support that already exists. So we've got our community-based directory, which is on our website. You can follow that link, and when you get on the website, if you follow any of those dots, you will see a breakdown of the different digital services they offer into different categories. So whether they offer skills support, whether they offer connectivity like tablet lending or national data bank SIM gifting, whether they offer skills at home, one-to-one, in a group, whether they support a particular community of interest, so for example, just unpaid carers, or the or community as a whole, so that people can signpost into that. And yeah, that's our community-based approach in a nutshell. If you're interested in hearing more about that, you can download the full model, which is quite long but useful, hopefully, which is based on the Digital Inclusion Toolkit website, which is another project that we've co-facilitated to help other local authorities and other partners understand the approach that we take and how they might be able to replicate some of our work and learn from some of our successes and mistakes. So the Digital Inclusion Toolkit, when I wrote that with the support of Local Government Association, I workshopped that with 5 different local authorities from across the country of different sizes and geographies, because we wanted to make sure that it wasn't a model for digital inclusion in Leeds, but it was something that could be replicated in other areas. And this is just a quote from Coventry City Council, who have in the last couple of years gone in leaps and bounds in developing their digital inclusion offer, and now have a dedicated team, which is fantastic to see, saying how they have found it useful. So if that's of interest, please do go and download that. As I mentioned, our next step is Digital Inclusion West Yorkshire. So West Yorkshire Combined Authority secured a bunch of money to support each of the local authorities in West Yorkshire that isn't Leeds, Bradford, Wakefield, Kirklees and Colesdale, to recruit a digital inclusion coordinator. So it's somebody that's working on the ground in the way that our team do in that area. And then 100% Digital Leeds will be taking a supportive role in training up those digital inclusion coordinators, supporting them to develop their offers, and sort of mentoring them over the next couple of years so that they can replicate our approach and hopefully have one joined up that connected offer for a region, which is really at a regional level, which I think is really exciting. And here's a quote from Tracy Babin, our mayor, about how excited she is to see that happening. So just really quickly, because I'm aware that I'm running out of time, I wanted to talk a little bit about evaluating the impact of our work, because that's something that people ask us about quite a lot. So often we're asked how we identify people that are digitally excluded, how we target our services, and how we understand the level of digital exclusion in Leeds, and how we can see that that number is coming down because of our work. And those are all things that we don't do. So we think of digital inclusion as something that is not a static state. So it's not a case of somebody is digitally excluded, we can put some support in place, and then they will be on the list of digitally included people and will stay on that list forever. And so we'll eventually see 0 digitally excluded people in Leeds because of our support. We understand that digital exclusion is exacerbated by all sorts of different factors, including cost of living crisis. So we're seeing probably more people being digitally excluded because of cost, and also more people being digitally excluded because of the sort of accelerated rate of digital transformation and different organisations that have got a digital by default or even digital first agenda. So we look at the numbers of people in the city that are in situations that indicate that they're more likely to be digitally excluded, as an idea of how many people are likely to be digitally excluded. And then we look at which organisations and services they're most likely to frequent and use, and then we look at embedding that digital inclusion throughout those services, as I just mentioned. So we're building a safety net of digital inclusion support so that when somebody is excluded, they will hopefully be identified quickly by the right people that have the right skills and resource and tools to be able to support them in the way that's meaningful for them. So one of our metrics is that how many organisations we've done that with. So this is just a map that we've produced for our latest scrutiny report. It doesn't quite look like it's loads of dots, but it's about 250 organisations that we've worked with in the last year, the team of 5. And then some numbers here, 247, almost there. On some of these metrics. So 247 teams, services and organisations that we've got currently as partners. Not all those are going to be on the community directory, because not all of those are offering digital inclusion services that can be signposted into in that way. There are lots of organisations that are doing digital inclusion that's just for their service users, or that's deeply embedded within their organisation and one-to-one and things that can't be signposted into. Over 500 people just in the last 12 months been trained in digital inclusion awareness. So that's that workshop that I was talking about at the start, where we exchange information. So we teach about digital exclusion and inclusion, and they teach us about the digital inclusion needs of their service users based on what we've told them. So we're telling them in the abstract, and they're reflecting back the reality that they see on the ground on a day-to-day basis. A load of people attending various different events that we've done, a load of organisations subscribing to our newsletter. I actually haven't put a link to the newsletter in any of these slides, but I will drop it in the chat shortly, because if you're interested in this stuff and you aren't subscribed, it's a long newsletter, but we try and gather on a monthly basis all the various different news tools, funding opportunities, partnership opportunities, etc., that our partners might find useful in supporting their digital inclusion. So there's a bunch of good stuff in it. If you would like to subscribe, please do. And in the last 12 months, we've also brought in just over £800,000 worth of funding that's all gone directly to third sector organisations, or mostly third sector organisations, for supporting digital inclusion. That is a little less than last year, which was over £1 million, but I think that's conducive to some of the reduction in funding opportunities and capacity of third sector to be able to apply for those funding opportunities. And here is a quote from one of our organisations, who's a care home, talking about that, giving an example of that embedded digital inclusion that's meaningful across the service, because often we talk in an abstract sense about we want as a society to support digital inclusion for employability or for financial resilience, or for improved for reduction of health inequalities. But really, when it gets down to an organisation and personal level, this is why we care so deeply about supporting people to do the things that are truly meaningful for them. So this is a person from a member of staff at a care home talking about the importance of supporting their residents for digital inclusion. And this is an example of, it's not actually in this quote, but the longer quote talks about how somebody was able to connect with their family virtually while in end-of-life care, which was really meaningful for them and obviously for their wider family. In terms of what that increased digital inclusion capacity translates to in terms of people in Leeds being supported, that's always difficult for us to really put a set figure against, because we're very aware that the organisations that we're working with, that would class as our delivery partners, are not organisations whose main job it is to support digital inclusion for the people they work with. We're often, we're not directly giving them money or resource. A lot of the time we're supporting them to apply for funding bids, etc., but we don't have a budget as a team to be able to pay any organisations. And so because of that, we try and be as supportive as possible and think about the mutual benefit as much as possible. And that also means that we ask them to do as little reporting as possible, because that only really benefits us. So in order to get some of the figures here, we surveyed our delivery partners that we worked with in the last 12 months. 15% of those shared the figures that they had to hand with us, which led to these figures. So with that, just 15% of delivery partners managed to support more than 20,000 people in one way or another with digital inclusion. 5,000 people from just that 15% that responded were supported with one-to-one digital skills support, and a further 3,500 were supported in a group support. Nearly 12,000 people received a SIM card. That's actually a number from the Good Things Foundation. So that's from all data bank partners in Leeds that are giving out SIMs via the data bank. So it's probably not all of the SIMs given out in Leeds, because we didn't contact Vodafone, Connected, etc., and other schemes, but it's not a 15% number is what I guess I'm saying. And then over 1,000 people were supported with a digital device to either loaned to be able to take home or gifted through various different schemes. So I've just got a quote here about, we say a lot, strengthening the place to empower the person. That's what we try and do. So this is a quote from Joe at Crossgates and District Good Neighbours, who's one of our favourite and oldest partners, and they've done absolute amazing work supporting digital inclusion for the people of East Leeds. When I was talking to them recently for a case study which hasn't been published yet around some work that they've been doing for digital inclusion for financial resilience, funded by Multiply funding, central government funding, that we were able to support them to access via employment and skills. I just thought it was amazing that they targeted the people using their food pantry. So Joe said that they've been doing their food pantry for 2 years, and in that 2 years, 900 families from the Crossgates area have accessed that support, individual families in 2 years, which I just think is, you know, just massive number. But as Joe says here, we got fed up with just giving people what's essentially a sticking plaster. We weren't getting to the root of the cause. So we started our cost of living session. So they started those sessions with that funding that I mentioned, which was to deliver 3 hours of guided learning around numeracy for financial resilience. So things like budgeting and maximising your benefits, all sorts of different things. And with that, the funding that were given, we asked the organisations that participated in that to spend approximately half of that funding on purchasing a good new, the lifespan of a minimum of, well, ideally 5 years with 2 years of free data device to gift to the individuals that they were supporting, which is what they did. And with one particular person that was telling me about got £19,000 back in housing benefits after they helped her with her emails, and that was to do with a change of rent when she went into a supported living environment that she hadn't been able to tell people about. So she'd been paying rent out for her money. Anyway, she was using the food pantry because she had no money, and she got a rebate of £19,000, which I think is fantastic. And there's lots and lots of examples like that. The full report, blog, will be coming out before the end of the month, and it'll be in the next newsletter. That's my deadline for myself, so read more about it there. And then just finally, we are aware that you know, more robust evaluation helps us out in you know, being able to bring in more resource and give more rationale for the need for our work. So we've got a bunch of academic research pieces ongoing at the moment around various pieces of our work. So one that I think is very soon to be published, which is I've got a slide actually with the theory of change on it, working with Leeds, Beckett University and Coventry City Council, looking at whether we can establish a theory of change, which will be the basis of an evaluation framework for a local authority-led digital inclusion programme. We've got a piece of research with the Institute for Health and Care Research, looking at our digital health hub, so whether community-based digital health inclusion programmes support the reduction of health inequalities. And then also a longer piece of work with Leeds Beckett University, looking at how digital and hybrid access can support service delivery for adults with learning disabilities and or autism. And I'm nearly at the last slide. This is the theory of change, or a draft of it that's been produced as part of that research. And I just thought it was useful to share, because you know, we're often challenged on some of our evaluation techniques and why we can't simplify it. And the thing that we've found from this piece of work is it's not simple. It's actually really, really complicated. And especially when you're working in a way that's holistic and person-centered, tailored to the needs of different organisations and to the needs of different communities, for the outcomes that are meaningful for organisations and individuals, it's very difficult. So I'll just end with that. Here are my contact details. You can email me at amy.hearn@leeds.gov.uk, or you can follow me on LinkedIn or Twitter, Amy Hearn on everything. We've also got a contact form on our website and loads more information about the work we do and various work streams and stuff like that.